Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us in the next installment of our Recycling in America series. This one focused on film and flexible packaging. We're going to be talking about building the roadmap for that material. I am going to drop a quick conversation starter in the chat. Feel free as you're coming online to respond to that. We would love to know where everyone is from, where you work within the recycling system, what part of it you touch most often. That would be a great way to introduce yourselves. So let's go ahead and get started. Our plan for today, we have a full agenda. We are going to be talking a little bit about just an introduction to the recycling partnership, how we got here, perspectives from the field. We've got amazing guest speakers on tap. And then we have a few closing takeaways to share at the end as well. So let's talk about those speakers. We really appreciate these folks for taking time out of their busy days. We've got a great lineup of speakers joining us today, representing some material-specific perspectives, including the US's first producer responsibility organization for packaging, a new nonprofit initiative, 2 brand companies, all who are investing in the success of film and flexible recycling solutions. In a moment, we're going to give them a chance to introduce themselves. So I'll keep going and share a little bit more about the support staff that you'll see popping into the chats and questions throughout this session. So just to introduce myself, I'm Karen Bandhauer with the Recycling Partnership. I also have my colleague, Catherine Hooded. Catherine and I co-lead the Film and Flexible Recycling Coalition for the Recycling Partnership. So again, we're just super glad to have you here. We also have some chat Q&A support that are some of our resident technical experts, and they're on standby to really help answer any of your questions. They can provide resources in the chat. Just a reminder that all the questions need to go into the Q&A function to be answered. If you have specific questions that you'd like to have us answer directly or potentially share with Catherine, you need to go ahead and put that in Q&A because it'll sit there and allow us to see it. Otherwise, when chat moves really fast, we can lose those pretty quickly. Please use the chat to connect with your peers, share your thoughts. That's really your space to collaborate virtually. Though we do ask you to please keep the conversations relevant and constructive. We have a lot to learn from each other, and we want to make sure that we're really respecting each other in the chat. You'll see Dylan and Danielle and Catherine kind of popping in through both of those places to keep us moving together for this hour. So with that, just a really quick introduction on the Recycling Partnership. We won't spend too much time here, but for anyone who's new to our organization, I know many of you have participated in these webinars before, but for the Recycling Partnership, we are a nonprofit, and we're hosting these webinars because they really help to advance the conversation around the recycling industry and these specific materials. And that helps us to achieve our mission, which is to build a better recycling system. So just a quick lay of the land before we jump into the very specifics of film and flexibles. Whether you're joining us for the first time or been tuning in all year, you may have seen this before. It shows up in a lot of our resources and on our website. And really, it's these 5 parts of the U.S. recycling system, and it allows us to ask the question, what must be true for the recycling system to work and to work well? So we ground all of our work with these 5 key areas. All packaging going into the system needs to be designed for recyclability. That's really the starting point. Then every household needs access to recycle, and they need to understand what they can recycle. All residents need to fully engage and participate in that recycling system. That participation and capture, that's really at the start of that reverse supply chain. And then recycling facilities need to be able to process the material, and they have to have end markets to send it to so it can be turned into something new. In 2024, we published a report that's called the State of Recycling Report. You'll be able to find that on our website, but it really gives a nice breakdown looking at through the lens of these 5 aspects of recycling and give the lay of the land across the US and on a state-by-state breakdown. The overlay on all of this, of course, is we are in a new paradigm with regard to policy in the United States. EPR, or Extended Producer Responsibility, has been passed in 7 states, although it's existed in Canada and Europe for years. Oregon is the first state to be implementing its EPR program via CAA, who Neil Menendez is going to be representing on the call today, the Circular Action Alliance. And Colorado and California are going to be quick to follow. So we'll get into this more and how it intersects specifically for foam and flexible packaging and these 5 parts of the system as we dig into our conversation today. And so with that, I'm going to pass the baton over to Catherine, and she is going to take us into our deep dive. Thanks, Catherine.
Thanks so much, Karen. And thanks everyone for joining us today. It's really exciting to see the turnout on such a complex topic. So really excited to dive in with you all. So we want to start with, what is film and flexible packaging, and really why does it matter for recycling in America? Well, first, it includes a really wide range of household and commercial packaging. Everything from big pallet wraps in warehouses and retail stores, but also a lot of consumer-facing packaging like personal and household care products, many grocery items. So think bread bags, cereal bags, baby food pouches, granola bar wrappers, chip bags, so much more. We could go on and on. So why is so much packaged in film and flexibles? Or you might hear today FFP or film and flex. We're going to call it a few of those different terms today. So why? Well, it's lightweight. It often can reduce transportation costs. It has a low life cycle analysis, or LCA, in terms of its environmental impact. But it also has a lot of protective properties. And there's also consumer preference. So for all of these reasons, FFP now makes up about 34% of the total US plastic packaging industry by weight, and it's growing at about 4% annually. So that's a lot of material, and though it has an incredibly low annual recycling rate. So in fact, nationwide, less than 1% of film and flex that's generated each year is actually recycled in the US. This low rate is actually driven by a range of challenges across the US recycling system. It includes insufficient end markets and demand, high costs to process the material, and also low commodity prices. It involves limited acceptance in residential recycling programs. Today, we see in the US, primary recycling access points for film and flex is usually through return to retail or store drop-off programs. And instead, only about 2% of households in the US can actually recycle that material in their curbside or jurisdiction program today. And then, of course, many of these things are highly contaminated. They have a diverse packaging portfolio, like we talked about earlier, and there's sortation challenges within the facilities. So there needs to be equipment and updates to help grow the capture of this material. So that's really the lay of the land across America today. And I think we can all agree from that synopsis, there's plenty of room for improvement. But as Karen, our host, mentioned earlier, EPR policy is really catalyzing change in the US recycling system, and perhaps in no bigger way than in California. It is the highest population state in the United States, and it's the world's 4th largest economy. So folks are really paying attention. So I want to take a quick look at California's EPR law. It's SB 54, or the Plastic Pollution Prevention and Packaging Producer Responsibility Act. Please try and say that 5 times fast. And as you can see here, it has established lots of ambitious targets for the state's packaging market. Ultimately, it's requiring 25% source reduction, 100% recyclable or compostable packaging, a 65% recycling rate, and that all recyclables are headed to responsible end markets, all by 2032. And that's right around the corner. So in California, there are 13 covered material categories for film and flex, and they're at risk for meeting these SB 54 mandated targets. So that's why we'll be digging in today with our esteemed panelists on what's happening and what's needed to quickly support this packaging type in California. And not just California, the rest of America too. So the good news is that solutions exist. There's no cookie cutter solution that we can adopt one for one from, say, Europe or Canada. We really have to acknowledge that the US and California are unique, and we're going to require our own twist on things. But we're also not starting from scratch. So not only are there existing solutions, but there's also a lot of incredible momentum right now. You can see on the screen there's plenty of nonprofit logos here, organizations that are rallying together on US solutions. And we're not solving it alone. We're collaborating with nonprofits and producer responsibility organizations, or PROs, or pros, you might hear all those terms today, that are in Canada and Europe as well. We're learning from their learnings, their mistakes, their solutions, and quickly advancing toward what's already proven elsewhere. And why are we looking to Canada and Europe? Well, these are countries that have had packaging EPR much longer than the US, 10 years or more, and they're successfully capturing household residential film and flex, and often successfully from mixed single streams, from bagged recyclables on the side, or even flowing through a MRF. And these countries are seeing higher residential participation rates and higher recycling rates, even for plastic packaging, upwards of 50% today in some places. So it is possible, and we can learn from others around the world. So how do we adapt those global learnings down to the ground in California and the US landscape? What do we know must be true? And then how can California make these solutions uniquely its own? So first and foremost, as Karen said earlier, old stuff must be made into new stuff. That's just table stakes for recycling. So in the instance of film and flex, we know that this lightweight, affordable packaging material needs economic support structures. This is going to be critical to pull that material through the recycling supply chain and into end markets and new products. Around the world, this looks like transportation cost support. It looks like long-term agreements to reduce the economic risk on the businesses operating across the recycling supply chain. We also see policies that can help strengthen demand in other countries and further de-risking the economics that way. In many instances, the end markets we have in the US need equipment and infrastructure too, to better process that residential material that's coming. And this material is often dirtier. It's more contaminated than the cleaner streams they're currently receiving today. The other piece is infrastructure support for collection and sortation. It's going to be critical. As I mentioned earlier, film and flex is primarily collected through store drop-off infrastructure in the US today. So starting by working with the existing infrastructure we have, and also collaborating with haulers and processing facilities on the ground today, so we can adapt to the unique challenges and needs of California's existing infrastructure. So we know tons, thousands of tons of incidental film and flex is currently showing up in a lot of these MRFs or material recovery facilities today. It's because people want to recycle it. But many of the MRFs don't have the equipment yet or the resources today to handle it. It's coming to them whether they're asking for it or not. So we need to understand what are the true costs for MRFs in terms of equipment and the impact to other commodities, important commodities like paper. So these facilities need support in ways that work for them and for the Californians they serve. All of this is necessary in order to increase those recycling rates for film and flex and for all other materials. So that's a lot. How do we get started? This is really where nonprofits like the Recycling Partnership come in. Given the big solutions and the quick timelines that are needed for California, we launched our CalFFlex initiative in March of this year to help identify what are the real world solutions that can uniquely be delivered for California. This new initiative is, of course, tapping into those global learnings I mentioned earlier, but also half a decade of US-specific data and projects across 50 different areas, already led by our broader Film and Flexible Recycling Coalition at the partnership today. So we're not starting from scratch by any means. And as you'll see, especially with our panel, we're not doing it alone. And we're quickly pulling forward detailed data and recommendations on what can work. And our objective here is really to demonstrate scalable pathways for film and flexible recycling in California. We need to show that if implemented, leveraging existing infrastructure and with customized improvements on the ground, it can be on the path to trending towards compliance with SB 54. And what that actually means is becoming recyclable with higher recycling rates than ever before seen in the US and perhaps even globally, which would be really exciting. So our CalFFlex initiative has a three-part focus underway right now. We're mapping collection and sortation solutions in partnership with California facilities and with others across the US. We're connecting with those end markets to understand what they need in terms of support and demand pull. And we're pulling everything we know into a blueprint to support Circular Action Alliance, the producer responsibility organization who will be joining us on the panel today, who will lead the way on enabling change in California and in other states. So some of you might be thinking, what about consumer education? What about the everyday people and how do they fall into the mix of what's needed? And yes, this is critically important. And though that step must come next, it comes a little bit later because currently in California, we estimate more than 500,000 tons of residential film and flex are flowing through homes each year. With a less than 1% recycling rate in California today, it's clear that current collection and sortation via the existing infrastructure in store drop-off and also a handful of communities and MRFs that do accept that film and flex curbside in California today, what we currently have is not enough. So before turning on the tap and telling all those consumers to run out and recycle their film and flex and unlock this 500,000 tons from California households, we need to first plug the holes in the bucket before we turn on that tap. This looks like facility capture, helping those facilities with equipment and improvements and solutions, and also investing in end markets. So you've heard a lot from me. That's the lay of the land on film and flex. And the exciting momentum is that this is driven by policy in California and also in 6 other states. So there's a lot of solutions out there. There's a lot of momentum, and it's really an exciting time in recycling to see so many nonprofits and companies stepping up to solve the problem with us in this CalFFlex initiative. So perhaps more exciting is the additional momentum that's being driven by our esteemed panelists. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. So I'd like to please welcome Neil Menezes, Vice President of Material Services with Circular Action Alliance. As mentioned earlier, it is the producer responsibility organization in the US. Maite Quinn Richards, who is Executive Director of the US Flexible Film Initiative. Rachel Lawrence, Senior Director of Sustainability at PepsiCo, and Teo Medellin, Director of Corporate Packaging Sustainability at P&G. So, Neil, I'd like to start with you. Film and flex recycling has a lot of progress to make on a very short timeline. Why do you see this as an all hands on deck moment for CAA? And can you tell us a little bit more about CAA as the leading producer responsibility organization in the US?
For sure. Thanks. Thanks, Catherine. And I think it'd be helpful just to maybe highlight who CAA is first, and then we can kind of get into, your question. So to your point, CAA, Circular Action Alliance, is the first US pro for printed paper and packaging. We are a not-for-profit, and we were founded by the producers. The companies that are ultimately going to be paying into the system. One of the benefits of our board, which is fairly extensive now, up to 24 companies, we cover the broad range of potential packaging formats that are going to be supplied into the market. So we have everything from retail to beverage to food to household goods to furniture. So we are pretty inclusive, and we have a lot of different perspectives across our board members. And one of the key things that's consistent across every single board member and founding member in this organization is the fact that plastic film and flex is the major priority for them because, as you kind of highlighted, it's so prevalent in our system today. We are the only pro that's been approved in California, Colorado, Minnesota, Oregon, and Maryland. And with 2 additional states having passed EPR, we'll be looking to be the pro for both Washington as well as Maine. Next slide. So I think this is one of the most critical things that helps us figure out this North Star because there is so much uncertainty in these programs and in the states. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that we're a compliance-driven, compliance-focused organization for producers. And we want to do this in the most cost-effective and efficient way possible. And from that perspective, we really want to drive on harmonization. The laws are complex and also inconsistent between states. So what we're trying to do is make sure that producers know what is required of them to be compliant, as well as what changes that they need to make to help us deliver the results that we need to. Through this, we recognize this is very much going to be a village. It's going to help us solve these problems. We're not naive to believe that we have all the answers. So we really enjoy being part of these discussions, these panels, so we can hear from the different stakeholders that are involved in solving the recycling system that's required to address these materials. So we work closely with governments, businesses, communities to reduce the waste and recycling in our system. So some of our key metrics where we will deliver on these activities is we are a compliance organization. So our goal will be to meet state-specific regulatory requirements, which, as I mentioned earlier, does vary from state to state. Our goal is not to reinvent the wheel. We know there's been a tremendous level of investment from local government service providers in delivering these services to consumers and to residents. And our goal is really to build on it. We're not looking to drop brand new MRFs across because it's not going to be the most effective and efficient way of our resources. We really want to get a better understanding of what's happening today and how do we leverage the expertise of the collective system. And then ultimately what we recognize is we want to drive circularity. We want to create the demand for these materials because the more we can drive the demand for these materials, the more we are going to have a buy-in from local government service providers to add more materials to the system, to take the additional steps required to provide residents with greater access. And then we know there are going to be recycled responsibility. So that's kind of our driving force, I would say, our North Star in terms of how we're trying to work with different stakeholders and deliver our services to producers and local governments. And Catherine, I don't know if you want me to answer the question or maybe let other people introduce themselves first and then come back to it.
I think you covered the momentum right there. This is super exciting. Thanks, Neil. And we're really excited to have CAA at the helm. Next, I'd actually like to pass it over to Maite. The CalFFlex and US FFI initiatives are collaborating a lot in driving sortation solutions and connecting existing MRFs to end markets. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what is US FFI doing and how you're really building the bridge from MRFs to end markets?
Sure. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. USFFI is a brand-led initiative focused on demonstrating that recycling flexible plastic packaging is both doable and scalable with the right financial support. Our founding members are PepsiCo, Mondelez International, Nestle, Mars, Hills Pet Nutrition, and General Mills. Next slide, please. Okay. So USFFI was created to fill a critical gap in the financial support needed to make flexible film recycling a reality at scale. While other efforts like CalFFlex and Alliance to End Plastic Waste are doing vital work, funding grants and capital investments, we're focused on the operational side, the funding that's required to make the bales and move the bales. We're entering into contracts with reclaimers and end markets nationally, and then focused on MRFs in California for now, with payments structured on a per pound basis. Approach ensures that the MRFs can consistently produce film bales to specifications, and that the reclaimers have the stability to process those bales and make usable resins and or new products. In our experience, there may be a small fraction of operators who can make it work without financial support, but most need that incentive to keep the system stable, scalable, and sustainable, ultimately proving that flexible packaging can and should be recycled with the right incentives in place. We do have to incentivize everyone. And then, Catherine, I guess, I'll hand it back to you.
That sounds great. I completely agree. These incentives and the work that USFFI is doing is hugely important. So with that, I think we might be taking down our slides and really welcoming the full panel to the screen so everyone can see faces. So I want to actually turn it to Rachel. In the vein of this all hands on deck moment, all of this momentum in the industry, PepsiCo is a member of both CalFFlex and USFFI. Of course, you are an obligated producer under these EPR laws. How are you viewing the need for all of this work right now? Why now? And what is the progress that you see to hope to see?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think as you're hearing from all of my esteemed colleagues here, flexible films needs, systematic change. Like it's big changes to big things. And we need teamwork all throughout the value chain. So our investments in CalFFlex and USFFI are because we see that need. We see the need to push the full value chain for solutions. And so while a grant in a MRF is super important, it's not alone, the only solution in providing that pull throughout the system. Achieving circularity is about, is contingent on many external forces like demand and supply, enabling policy, infrastructure, participation and collaboration of the industry, consumers, and governments alike. So we know that flexible bales do not hold a lot of value, and we need to stabilize the system and incentivize the system to make sure that collection and sortation all the way through end markets happens. I think we believe that if we put all the right players in place and into motion, we're all rowing in the same direction, we can make impact. So, you asked what progress do I hope to see? Well, we've been kind of testing recycling of films for years. I think it's moving beyond testing and it's moving to more scale demonstration, which is our goal with the partnership with these organizations. And, the question is why now? Well, because it's the time for changes now. It's time to make impact. EPR is gaining momentum in the US, and it's an important push that we need. And so if not now, when? If not us, who? And it's go time.
It's go time. I love that, Rachel. So I want to turn to Teo here and say, okay, so P&G has been an obligated producer in Europe and Canada. You're a huge supporter of this work here in the US as well. What answers do you see existing from around the globe that US and California can really start to solve for now?
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's indeed a privilege to be in this conversation for Films and Flexibles. Hello, my name is Teo Medellin, and I'm the Director for Corporate Packaging Sustainability in Procter & Gamble. So in P&G, we believe in leveraging our scale to bring solutions from wherever across the world. So we have found that systems have been developed in Europe, and they have been working for several decades for films and flexibles. There's a couple of learnings that we recently collected as a team, and we went to Europe, and we collected a few learnings that were eye-opening. Honestly, it was a lot of work, but very rewarding. Let me start with a couple things. Well, number one is that the technical model exists. We get a lot of questions. Can we separate flexibles? Yes, it can be done. We saw examples of machines and plants running where they are separating plastics, whether they are coming pre-sorted from homes in the upper part of Europe, where they separate plastics from paper and from others. But then we went to France, and in France, paper and plastic come together, and the transformations that they use are transformations that that you find in some of the MRFs here in the US. It's just how they are arranged and the level of integration that they have. And here in the United States, well, we basically sort out films in the beginning of the operation because we don't want the films to be in moving forward in the operation. In basically it's incidental film. In Europe, the operations are fine-tuned to these to grab and take away the film and flexible packaging in order to make bales and to move that product. Now, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's the very good news for everybody. It can be done. Really, the problem is a business problem. Is how do we move the bales? It's about in making sure that we play curbside, because the reason why the system in Belgium that has been able to get to levels of 50% recycling rate, or in France now getting closer to 30% recycling rate, is because they are leveraging curbside collection. And that is really bringing the largest volume of films and flexibles into circularity. And last but not least, one more learning that I think is important is to leverage monomaterial designs. We found that the end markets for monomaterials are more vibrant. They are better established. Even with that, they need a little bit of help. Nevertheless, when we talk about multi-materials, that has been how we have designed films and flexibles in the past. Those end markets are lacking. It's very difficult to separate those materials. So we are going to need to start thinking in a different way, because if we want to get to high levels of performance, 60, 65% recycling rate, we're going to need to start thinking how we are going to recover those pellets in a way that they are going to provide future value.
I love that. We need to start thinking differently. And also we don't have to start from scratch. So that was really helpful, thinking about the equipment, the technology that already exists around the world to really get this material out of the household and also out of the MRF where that's happening. I want to pose a question to the group, and don't all clamor at once. What about end markets? We've talked about the need for the demand for this material. What can residential film and flexibles be made into? And how do we develop those as responsible end markets here in the US?
I can go first.
Okay.
Or Tio, no, go. By all means.
Go ahead, Neil.
I would say from the end market perspective, we're looking at it from a short-term and a long-term perspective. Ideally, what we recognize, and I've seen some of the questions come up in the chat, in terms of what is some of the successful recycling options. And what we know is there's plastic lumber, we know there are railroad ties, we know there's some drainage tile. We recognize those are our short-term solutions to make sure that the bale movement can happen. And just to Catherine's point earlier, there's about 500,000 tons of residential film that's put on the market. So we need significant capacity to move those materials. But we recognize there's only so often people are rebuilding their decks or railroad ties or drainage tiles. So at some point it's going to hit a capacity. So what we want to do is look at how do we ensure there's an outlet for durable goods to begin with, but in parallel find a way of getting it back into packaging. So that's a circularity that's really needed in that space, because that's a material that if you can get it back into packaging, we can have that constant demand. As you put more into the system, then the more you're pulling out from the recycling system as well. So that's how we're looking at it from a demand and market perspective.
I love
If
that,
I would
Neil,
just build
and
on that and say,
Yes.
like, if you think about the variety of the short and long term, you need a variety of solutions to recycle the material, but you also need to leave the door opens for innovation. Obviously we're still learning as we go, and it's important that, in these early stages of EPR programs, we keep methods of innovation open.
Yes, we found that established markets are indeed going film to film, for example, for trash bags and grocery bags, agricultural film. So they're established demand where PE, polyethylene shines. And definitely the bread and butter for polypropylene films is durables, as Neil was just mentioning. I do believe that we are going to need to plan in the long term to move and develop markets. It will need conviction. It will need ingenuity from everybody around the table. And I think most importantly, we need to put our talents to work. In P&G, let me just tell you a quick story. P&G, we know a thing or two about cleaning things, right? So we just launched 2 technologies in the last 12 months. One is the dissolution technology in order to clean, recycle it from materials. And we just launched yesterday at the K show in Europe a solvent extraction technology that can purify films and flexibles. It's a modular system that you can put next to a washing line or in place of a washing line that will upgrade the purity of the material. And now we can start thinking about other applications and other markets. Now, this is very new. And of course, we're still trying to understand what are the markets that we are going to be able to tap into now that we can super clean films and flexibles that indeed when we are thinking about post-household, post-consumer, well, they're going to be dirty. They're going to have bacon. They're going to have different things. But now we can clean them. So what opportunity does that entail? Does that open? Now, this is only one of the things that we are doing. And I'm sure that everybody around this table has talents that they can bring to help solve this problem.
I like the idea of super cleaning bacon, Teo. I like that a lot.
And
Maite, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I was just thinking, that diversification in markets is hugely important. I think we have as many markets as possible. So durables are an amazing outlet. And also the incentive, we need to keep that incentive in there for like going from bag to bag, especially even into garbage bags. Typically, if virgin pricing is cheaper than PCR, that's where they're going. So we hope to incentivize people so that they can continuously send that material to a bag-to-bag end market, but it does need that incentive.
Absolutely. I've been hearing in this discussion all options on the table for end markets because we need all of them that we can. Neil, you're talking about how do we start with the short term, some of the easy established markets today. Teo, you're talking about what is that long term? What are some new innovations that have only been announced this week that we can look out into the future and really see what's possible? So really exciting. And I think as we discussed earlier in the hour, thinking about all the collection and sortation options on the table too, and what does that transition look like on the ground in California? We've got to transition all of this existing infrastructure along from the store drop-off it has today into what is going to be that really high scale participation and volume that we're seeing in other countries around the world, making it easy for folks to do this at home and not have to drive their material someplace, hopefully in the future. So all options on the table for collection, sortation, and markets, especially as it's early days for us to really get started. Really exciting stuff. So I want to ask, from your perspective, each of you, what's a success story when it comes to film and flex recycling? How can we build on that success and find sustainable pathways for this packaging going forward?
I'm going to answer that question a little bit differently because I thought about it differently, if that's okay. I think of like, what is success? It's getting something that is recycled. Sometimes, like film, for example, in the MRF side, there's market sometimes and sometimes there's not. How do we get to consistency? And I thought about success stories I've had in the past. And when I used to work at Sims about 15, 20 years ago, we were not recycling curbside polypropylene. And we had the volume and we were like, how are we going to figure this out? We worked really closely with the reclaimer for years. And today that material moves consistently. And to me, that's the story that I keep and I think about. Like, we did it then 15 years ago. Everyone thought it was impossible. We worked really hard. We worked with the partners and we made it happen. And I think we can do the same thing with film.
It is possible. Yeah, I love that.
Yes. Something that comes to mind is the MRFF effort in Pennsylvania, the MRF for the Future. I think that is a success story that sometimes goes under the radar, but it's been working for three years at least, and it has increased the level of quality. They are definitely collecting films and flexibles from post household, and they are turning it into an end market. It was ceiling tiles last time I checked, so it's a durables market, but they have continued to upgrade the quality of the output, and they were in the levels of 90%. So I think that is a remarkable success story in the US. We have it here in the backyard, and it's worth checking the progress that they're making. And thank you, everybody involved. I think it was TRP, the Alliance, ACC, for showing that things can be done.
That's right, Teo. There's exciting stuff happening around the world, but there's also exciting stuff happening right here in our backyard. And it is happening in the US, and there's just a lot of momentum right now for that to become much broader. Yeah.
And just to build on that, we also have the FCC Houston shout out Murph, and where we just made the announcement with TRP, in partnership with TRP, Kraft Heinz, and PepsiCo. We threw a little extra sauce, if you will, to try and do a full Murph retrofit, which is going to give us, I think, great data to help with California learnings, and how we can get smarter. So again, collaboration is key, and if we can keep doing that as an industry, I think we'll make big impact.
Absolutely, because this is recycling in America. And while there's a lot of momentum around California, there's exciting things that are happening in places like Houston, Texas, where MRFs are ready to upgrade and make some real advancements within their retrofits and facilities to say, how can we more intentionally capture this material? Yeah, absolutely. Neil, any thoughts from your side?
No, I think the team has captured some of those major success stories, and also looking at where the European markets have gone to, it shows us what's possible with, and the European market is different because they have had EPR for a longer time. They had the recycling behavior ingrained in them. So it's something that we can work towards it, and hopefully we can do it faster because we'll have all the ability of learning what worked and what didn't work that we can do in a much shorter time frame. So that's the goal and the hope in terms of like it is possible. But now how do we kind of get to work? How do we start making these bales move to appropriate end markets, see what the end markets can do with them? How do we drive more demand? Because if you can solve the demand side, I think a lot of these other issues are almost secondary.
It is possible. Now let's do it faster than ever before. Okay, so one last question for you all. If you could encourage communities, companies, policymakers, all the variety of different folks who are on this call, and many stakeholders across this recycling supply chain, if you could encourage them to take one small step today to support this momentum and the future of film and flex recycling, what action would that be, and maybe why?
I'll go first. I would say let's get involved. I mean, we ask our stakeholders to continue to support and enable the industry to allow for innovation and recycling. Policymakers enable policies that unlock circular use of materials, local communities. This is like a shared action, but can we continue to build relationships and work shoulder to shoulder together to educate and empower consumers to make more sustainable choices? As companies, join us in building these coalitions and collaborative opportunities. We need the support of a village, and it's going to take a village to make this big change. So how can we partner together? So we know solutions may not be perfect today, but we can start to pave the way for outcomes down the road. And I think that's really important as we move forward.
Yeah, I love that optimism.
Yes. So I'd like to say that these are very exciting times to be a packaging engineer in around the world. Things are changing, and we need to think better about end of life. And for films and flexibles, it's extremely important that we start looking at design and design to monomaterials. Now, I know that this could be a difficult task for everybody, but we need to do it. What we are seeing on the end markets is that you have a chance if you have a monomaterial. there's applications, there's end markets, and there's going to be more because we are going to clean them better, and we are going to need to bring, and we're going to be able to bring that material back into circulation. Today, we are using high performance plastics that indeed can have a second life or a third life. That's what we do, and that's what we can do with technology. Nevertheless, we need to start with design, and that's what we have seen on established markets. Because once you have two layers co-extruded and they are different materials, it's very hard to deal with them. So think about that. That's one thing that we can do. I can tell you on our side, we are taking this very seriously. In P&G Europe, we are almost complete with the conversion to monomaterials. It was not easy. We had to involve our suppliers, had to involve our plants, equipment manufacturers in order to do this transition on multiple years. But we are almost done in Europe. Now in America, we have our sight to get there because we know that this is going to be in the benefit of the system that we are trying to build. So I encourage you to think differently on how we are designing, and also try to come to the table and with solutions and collaborate with us on what we are trying to build.
Yeah, that's right, Teo. At the start of the call, Karen shared the 5 elements of recyclability, and it starts with design. So that's absolutely right.
Yeah, and I would say Teo and Rachel kind of hit the nail on the head. It's how do we provide greater innovation and collaboration? I think Rachel and I were at a board meeting this week, and it was universal. The attention that the brands are providing, like they are seeing what do we need to do, and every single lever is on the table. And it's one of those options where like, how do we work with different groups? How do we identify what those test pilots need to be? And we will look at partnering and collaborating. And it doesn't need to be just ideas generated from us. If other communities have ideas, we're going to be looking at opening up a bit of an intake in terms of potential pilots and projects that people want to experiment and try. So we really want kind of the full range of solutions, because a different approach from how we approach it, how a community who's working with residents on a day-to-day basis may have a completely different perspective than from us in terms of how we're trying to comply with it. So really, I would say, how do we find this way to collaborate and innovate new solutions together? Because we're committed to finding solutions, and our first few years is just trying to see what is going to work and what isn't going to work at a pilot level, and then how do we rapidly scale. And I really want to stress, like, it's going to be a rapid scale up of these initiatives. So the more we can test and pilot early days, the faster we can identify the pathways to success.
That's really exciting, Neil. Yep. I think that collaboration is critical and really exciting to hear. How about you, Monte?
Yeah, I would say demand, right? So one small step is for all companies to commit to buying US made film with PCR or durable products made with mixed MRF bales. That's really it. Like, we can all do something. We can go back to our companies and really push that. I mean, it's a small step, but I think it's really important to help push that demand.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have to be able to turn old stuff into new stuff. And without that demand in the end markets, we're just turning on the tap and there's nowhere for it to go. So really, really important.
I'd like to add Maite's point that I think it's extremely important that we work on incentives for recycled content, whether they're taking on recycled content, whether it's infrastructure. That's something that has been in our minds for some time. TRP has been leading some legislation on infrastructure. Now it's on us to work on incentives for brands to take on recycled content.
Absolutely. Buy this material in all the different ways that Neil described earlier, that we're going to need all these different end markets, near term and long term.
It's go time.
It's go time. It's go time. All right, so we did start, the top of this call with a pretty bleak lay of the land in the US, and we've been talking about a lot of momentum, and it's just really exciting and encouraging to have all of your organizations, your minds, and so many more at the helm and figuring out these solutions. And I think the time really is now, because there's a lot of momentum behind this. So I want to thank all of you for joining our panel today. We have a few closing takeaways and some closing logistics, but it's been an honor to chat with you all today and bring all of your insights forward from across the supply chain and the system. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, so we've had an action-packed almost hour. We want to wrap up because there was a lot that you all heard, and it's really helpful to synthesize what just happened. A few key takeaways for the group today. We heard that there are solutions for film and flexible recycling. It does exist, and it's really time to apply those global and national learnings now, and uniquely to California, and then of course to spread that to opportunities across the country. We know that collection, sortation, and end market demand advancements are critical, but we also heard that there's no one size fits all. We can't just come in and say, this is the answer everywhere. And we definitely heard that from Neil. It's going to have to be a collaborative process on the ground to say what works uniquely for every place that needs support. And then EPR policy is expediting these solutions. It's enabling the Producer Responsibility Organization, CAA. It's enabling nonprofits and NGOs like the Partnership and USFFI and many others, and stakeholders across the industry to really build this groundswell of momentum and get moving on what works. So it's an exciting time for film and flexible recycling. There's a lot of room to grow, and we're excited about what's ahead. So with that, I will pass it back over to you, Karen.
Awesome. Oh, great. Thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you everyone who joined us for the last hour. We really appreciate it. We've been trying to get to everyone's Q&As just as quickly as we possibly can. We'll continue to try to do that. We'd love to get in touch. We'd love to stay connected. Here's some ways that you can do that. You can email us, you can connect to us through our website, and you can go ahead and scan this QR code to learn more as well. So thank you again. We're going to keep the Recycling in America series going. We'll have more information in the coming months about what our next topic's going to be, but we're gonna keep at it, and we'll keep advancing the system together. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.